All right, we're going to get started in a minute. What I would ask everybody to do, just please put your cell phone on silent. If you have a pending emergency or waiting for the main lottery number to be called. That's got to be better yet. So. You are here.
Okay, it is now 5 o'clock. We are here to hear a presentation, and this is, I guess, a re-presentation of we had an initial presentation about, I guess, well over a year ago now, right? Yeah, probably at least a year and a half now. And this is on the Main Park LLC. If anybody doesn't know where that site is, it's the old Cranberry Pizza facility that burnt down, and the adjacent properties and lots thereof all around there. So hopefully everybody got a chance to get the plans and review them, and at least look at them. One of our planning board members who normally would sit on the DRC is conflicted on this, and that's Bill Gettings, but he did provide some comments to Steve. I saw his email to Stephen as a private citizen. So he made those points. So if you'd like to come up and start your, now, do we have to swear everybody in, or this is not a formal hearing, so. But please just introduce yourself, and you got to push the button, so.
The right one? The one on the right?
Keep it on. Keep it pushed.
No, on the.
On the right,
Ah,
there you go.
that
Now you don't have to hold it, there you go.
It's on screen, I think. You're gonna want to talk uncomfortably close to it so that they can hear you.
Okay. All right. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Thank you for meeting with us, giving us your input. We're professionals. I think we have, my name's Stephen Hambro, Hambro. My office is in Dayton, South Brunswick, right over the border. This, as you noted, is, Mr. Chairman, is a application for, basically, it's like a redevelopment, I'd call it almost, where the main intersection, 61, 63 North Main Street, one building was burned, had a fire some time ago. Hi. So we're here basically today to present what we are proposing to build, hopefully, and looking for your input in terms of, and thoughts as to what the proposal is all about, and whether you have some things that might help to improve the proposal. And we're certainly listening, want to hear what you have to say about that and what we've presented or will be presenting to you this evening. We have with us tonight, Mark Lieber is our engineer. He prepared the site plan. We have an architect, Mr. Stephen Golisano, who is local in Cranberry as well. He did the architectural. He's been involved. He was at the previous meeting about a year and change ago. I think there've been some developments since then. I'll let him talk about what those changes may be, or just present what we're looking at now and what we think are improvements. Sure.
Excuse me. I think what would be helpful is if you can give a quick synopsis of what you initially proposed, what we asked you to come back with, or what we've made suggestions of, because it appears you did look at some of our suggestions and take that into consideration as far as, heights and viewpoints and stuff like that. So if you could just kind of start with that and very quickly, and then, transition to where we are today. I think that'd be helpful for everybody.
I was not involved in that process originally, so maybe what I can do is bring up Mr. Golisano at the beginning and have him.
That's fine.
bring you up to speed on what was discussed previously.
You want to take a chair next to him, Steve, or, please? And by the way,
Why don't you let him sit here for the time being and then.
if you would like to take your tie off, you're more than welcome to, because we are in summer casual mode. So.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, you're more than welcome. Take your jacket off, and make yourself home.
Appreciate
So-
that. Thank you. Okay.
Okay,
This means this one's on?
yes.
Okay, so just a quick summary of what was given last time versus this time. Previously, the front main building on Main Street was proposed to be a much larger building, which had more than, or first floor and second floor, partial second floor as commercial retail space, potentially for a restaurant. There was a larger outdoor component to that project, which included patio space that was shared on both lots. One of the main things that we were asked about was the lot consolidation and to consider combining the two lots into one. I believe that is the plan for moving forward, is to combine that, even though it's still a different project. But Steve Hammer will talk about that a little bit more later.
Yeah, I think that's just a lot consolidation deed. It's pretty straightforward since it's
Yeah, I think
really
that's what
one property.
We made
basically.
that as a suggestion last time.
Yeah, there were a lot more shared amenities from site to site previously. That now the only thing that's really overlapping is the portion of a new proposed apron and parking that is now overlapping onto the 61 North Main Street site. There are 4 buildings currently on the site. There are multiple units within each of those buildings. Previously, we were only dealing with the reconstruction and rebuilding of the front building, which I said was larger, proposed to be larger. Now, we took into account a lot of the comments for height and uniformity for the one building to the next, so that it wouldn't be appear to be 2 totally separate structures that were combined. That's also drastically reduced the square footage. And we were, instead of using and reusing the back 2 buildings, we are proposing to rebuild the back 2 buildings to improve the site setbacks that currently exist on site. Currently, the gray building on the site is directly adjacent to the property line. Almost 0 setback on the property lines. I believe there's the 2 rear and side property lines. And so we're proposing that the new buildings will actually improve that condition. And by rebuilding the what we consider the brown building on the site, that allows for additional parking on site, which would not have been possible if it remained. We are able to. We'll talk about the proposed parking soon, but the proposed parking that's on the plans wouldn't be possible if the brown building stayed in its current location. And so what's being shown for the front main building now, you'll notice that it's still vague on the exact tenant that's going to be within the commercial space, because it is undefined at this time. There's some flexibility built into the design as far as how much of the back of house space will be used actually for back of house retail versus what might be able to be used depending on the tenant that's in there as more space.
So you just a real quick question. So the interior is essentially making it like a flex space then?
Essentially trying to make that down, at least for now, until we have a tenant defined, but we would probably make it in a way where it could be adapted.
But the outside would remain the same, and the views and windows and all that?
That's correct. We're trying to make
Okay.
it so that we're not having them there. So that's the difference between the general difference between the last submission and the first submission. One of the things that happened in between our last DRC meeting and this meeting was this last February, we met with the HPC. So we were able to go over the requirements from them too and get their initial comments, and it was well received. And during that meeting, that was when we had initial approval from them to remove those 2 back buildings, because while even I thought initially that they were older historic buildings, they actually were rebuilt, and based on the historic resource survey, they are non-contributing buildings in the historic district. So that's the main reason that they actually allowed a verbal approval during that meeting that those two buildings could be rebuilt. So in order to keep with the feel and I think the density of downtown and the Village Commercial District, we're trying to really replicate some of the some of the two-story residential buildings that have tight alleyways between them, or tighter alleyways between them on Main Street. Slightly different elevations as the site rises, so they don't look like they're perfectly lined up, but they look like they're and they are actually duplexes. So that also is something that happens throughout town, and it can be seen as examples. So we're trying to follow historic vernacular in town as we come up with the designs.
So let me interrupt real quick again. So those two houses, and we'll get back to them in a minute. Are they going to be rental units? Are they going to be stores, or what's the verdict on that yet?
It's not yet determined, really. I think potentially they could be condo and with an association at some point. But I don't think a final determination as to the ownership and how that's going to work has yet been made.
Okay.
We know that one of the bigger concerns with a situation like that is that there's a maintenance plan on the exterior that's put in place to take care of the exterior of the building. So depending on how that is broken out, there could be a maintenance plan that's available if it's in the HOA situation, or if it's individual ownership, have the responsibility of the individual owner. So that's still to be determined, but looking for input on that.
So I think it's on page 4 of your elevation, Steve. It does show the building on Main Street, the one that you're talking about being somewhat of a flex. But it does have the elevations, and it does have the front view, the rear view. I think this is like kind of the main focus of the entire development, really. And it's really what's driving this. And if you look at that, if you want to talk about those elevations and that building, that might be helpful.
Sure. So when you're looking at that that drawing, you'll notice that there is an emphasis put on the first floor retail facade that wraps around the 3 sides of the building. The front side that faces the Victorian on the corner only partially, and then around the front face of the building and along the post office courtyard side.
So front face, let's clarify, that's Main Street,
Main
correct?
Main Street facing, correct. The side view, the southern facade, is the facade of the alleyway between the Victorian building and the new proposed building. You'll notice that is a ramp that actually goes up between the Victorian and this new building. So in order to get ADA access into this new building, there'll be a slight elevation change through the alleyway. Instead of sloping slightly downward, it's going to slope slightly upward. That will actually allow for ADA access into this proposed building and a future entrance into the Victorian off the side alleyway, which will also greatly improve. That way we don't need to do anything drastic to look different on Main Street from an older building. We were able to get a porch look with stairs as the main entrance, and allow for some uninterrupted areas, potentially for outdoor dining or seating of some kind, depending on the tenant that's in that space. There are having only 1 stair now versus 2 stairs previously. There could be an improved streetscape along on that side, and then the larger northern facade, which has been broken up into essentially 3 portions that follow the roof line also. This is part where the little bit of the flex comes into play, because most likely the first portion of that closest to Main Street, the first would be most likely this elevation is shown. The windows that break up in the middle section are kind of a transition space, and then that rear portion, depending on what actually goes in as a tenant, that we may have slightly less windows in that back area, and the potential for a similar panel look, but not necessarily windows. We don't want to be highlighting, back of house storage space or anything like that off of Main Street. And it's happened in some other cases in town where you see kind of utility closets and things like. We want to avoid having anything like that being shown from the interior, as the lights are on. Directly behind that is I should go to the rear elevation next, as we're kind of working our way around the building, which is the number 3 on that sheet, the western facade. This faces back towards the new proposed on-site parking. And you can see that on the left portion of that facade, the northern portion is a loading dock entrance. So that could be directly tied into the back of house space and also retail or the residential in some way. And then on the right-hand side of the building, similar doors, but a little bit different porch entrance is the main residential entrance into the building.
Okay.
There's also a residential egress door off the side that allows for direct egress out. So this is another, they don't have to travel through that interior space to get out of the building.
So on the first floor, it's what's the square footage of the retail space that we're talking about here, approximately? Steve.
It's approximately 1,500 square feet, 1,502, kind of gross square footage for undefined commercial tenant. There is a portion of that on the floor plan we kind of have carved out of that footprint as the residential access. And that is, access and amenities, interior mail slots potentially, or storage for deliveries and things like that. Don't have to get stored outside of the building. And so those two numbers would float slightly depending on where that party wall gets defined within that space.
And then as you go upstairs, you have residential units, right? Office and residential.
Yes. So upstairs there would be two. The proposed is to have on the second floor, in the front and the back of the building would be either two 1-bedroom and 2-bath units. So 2-bedroom, 2-bath units on the second floor, and 1-bedroom, 1-bath units on the third floor. So that central stair serves those units, and this would be possible by having this building fully sprinkled. So there would be a sprinkler system within this building.
So right now, you're currently looking at all residential for the second and third floor, no office?
Second and third floor being residential. That's the proposed. And so that's the split for the front building. And then the two buildings, if we want to talk about them too.
Go ahead.
The back two buildings are a little bit different for the rear building. Because they're duplexes, they have a total of each building is about 4,300 square feet, 4,298 gross square feet, but that would break down into two different 1,760 square foot rental or built duplex units. So depending on how they are, but they're 3-bedroom, 3.5-bath each. So those rear buildings would essentially be just 4 units split between 2 buildings.
What is the current square footage on the 2 existing buildings there now? Do you have an idea of that?
The current square footage of the brown building is approximately just over 1,000 square feet, 1,035 square feet. And the gray building, which is the farthest building in the back, is approximately 1,416 square feet. So the footprint is going from, that's the gray building, and the footprint is 960 square feet, where the footprints would be obviously increased, but they'd be all improving the setbacks that exist currently on the site. So taking them off the lot lines and moving them inward, but keeping front of the buildings with the porches that face West Park Place being in line with the Victorian on the corner, how it is in the feel of much of the other Main Street buildings, how the porch comes and porch and stairs come up to the sidewalk, and kind of having that similar feel. So they, we really wanted to mimic that feel and look to it. Now what ends up happening with what would probably be considered density in that one area and what we're blocking is it's a unique position because we're not in the position of casting a shadow on other houses or other other buildings necessarily, other than the post office. And those two back buildings would actually provide a little bit better screening from West Park Place of the loading dock to the post office, which currently, you can see as you look through the two buildings. It's essentially a trade-off there a little bit of what you can see and can't see. We're not overly concerned by the proximity of the rear of these buildings, looking out onto the loading docks from how nice the units are to be in, because the post office is no longer the hub for the area. So it's slower traffic and less truck traffic that go in and out of there. So there will be some, but that's been reduced drastically in the past couple of years.
And in terms of the house, the building on the corner, what are the changes that we're making on that one?
Sure. So the Victorian on the corner, we propose to leave the same. We want to with some minor updates to the exterior, depending on the final layout of the courtyard area that we are proposing in the plan. There's a smaller courtyard area, but there is some exterior shared space and open space for public use, really, on the outside of the back of that building. There is a existing rear porch, covered porch entrance that goes into that building. But when the alleyway has the ramp, that door will move around to the side of the building into the alleyway, and there won't be a reason for that door and staircase to be in that location anymore. So that would likely be replaced with windows that look out to the back, that look out to that courtyard area. So other than that, though, the corner building is going to be repaired and cleaned up to look nice again. There are some things that are odd on the front porch and things like that will be fixed and replaced, and look forward to doing that.
And the whole
Is-
tenor, I'm
Is
sorry,
the
go ahead.
anticipation that building will be retail or additional residential?
So that building does have a retail component, a commercial component on the first floor, and there was a plan actually to have a coffee house go into that, but that did not pan out. So we're still in the works with new plans. There's still tenant is undefined for that space currently, but there is an apartment above that, 1 bedroom, 1 bath unit that's above that. So.
And then, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, and this is already part of the presentation. How about parking? Can we talk about, because Okay.
Sure. So,
I'm gonna let you ask.
I mean,
I'm gonna let you wade in.
some of the things that might kind of lean towards that parking discussion and would probably finish up my portion is talking about some of the buffering around the new parking area. So there's proposed to be some sort of a fence or low landscaping that hides the majority of the parking, other than a new entrance apron that's cut from West Park Place. It's essentially relocating the existing apron that's already on West Park Place more centrally to the site. And through that access point would be the parking, but I also want to just mention that there's the trash enclosure behind, which you can see on that third sheet also. The trash enclosure, which is meant to look like a small shed behind the building, that actually houses the trash, recycling, and above on a loft level mechanical units that would hide for the building, so mechanical units don't have to be on the face of the building or within the courtyard area.
Okay.
Just
A quick summary. So what you've done is you've lowered you shrunk the main building in the front per our recommendations. But then you built two bigger buildings in the back, which are, you said each one is 4,000 square feet each, roughly?
That's correct. Just double check that. 4298.
Yeah, so we're going from, let's say, roughly 2,500 square feet between both houses to over 8,000 square feet now for what you're now proposing. And I don't know if that was in your, was that in, where we, I don't remember, did we have houses put in the original plan, or were we going to
The
leave it?
previous DRC submission did not have work to the rear building shown.
Right.
The submission to the Historic Commission showed work to the rear buildings, and it was slightly different, but per that review, we took the time to then go back to the drawing board, revise again, and draw up these two buildings to come in front of you for your two.
Okay.
And just as a note, just as for parking and for other things, as far as discussion goes, there are existing units in each of these buildings currently. So, in the front Main Street building before the fire, there really were 4 units until Cranberry Pizza took over the second commercial space, and it became one unit. So there really, at the time of the fire, there were 3 units within the front Main Street building. And so, the first floor was about 1366 square feet, and there was a studio apartment with 1 full bathroom on the first floor also. And then there was a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment on the second floor of that building. So while there are the numbers are increasing slightly, but they're also, there's a delta to that. So there's the changeovers on the side. The Brown building also currently has a retail, or was planned for, and always historically had a retail space in the first floor, and that retail component would be going away. We actually feel that would decrease the traffic load in that potentially in that the coming into and from that space. Even though the ordinance allows for the mixed use expansion, but then that corner or the back gray building also has 2 units in it. So it has the first floor studio apartment and a 2-story, 2-bedroom apartment with a full bathroom also. So as far as kind of the counts go, we wanted to point those out as far as we're not working from nothing up to the units that we're proposing. We're proposing alternate size units.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just how many current parking spots do you have with your proposed plan?
I think we have 5 currently.
And I
Included?
actually will let Mark
Okay.
talk about this portion of it, just so that we stick to our lanes on the site plan.
Go ahead.
Hi, how you doing? There is a driveway apron off of Park that goes to the back 2 buildings. There's kind of an undefined parking area back there. There's some stone and broken concrete. It was probably someone's lawn, and they probably just started parking there over time.
I think there are some wheel stops that kind of
So,
show. Spaces.
when we looked at the property, we started to focus on the on-street parking just to see, 1, does it conform to standards, and 2, is it being used? And the answer to the first is no, it doesn't conform, but it is being used. So for example, a standard on-street parking space is 23 feet long. There's 8 spots along this property that are only 20 feet long, which, is a little challenging to get in and out of, and yet they're being used. Part of the proposed plan was to take away those 8 spaces and put in 6 conforming 23-foot long on-street spaces, but then we would be creating a driveway apron that's a full 2-way width into a parking lot on our property for 10 spots. Right. Now,
Plus, going from how many, 8 on the street?
there's 8 that are undersized. If you were to go out there and legitimately restripe these to be 23 feet long, it'd probably be 7. But, you know, if you're in a smaller car, can you get into a 20-foot spot? You can. But, you know, it's not conforming to like a current standard.
So I think he's asking about the number. Are you asking about total number?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm looking at the street plus your lot. What are we?
16.
16.
Is what we're doing.
We have 8 that are undersized, but we're going to 16 that are perfectly sized. Is that what you're saying?
Right, there is one in front of the property on Main, but that would just remain one spot. Now, if the post office wants to eliminate their no parking zone, that might be an opportunity to add more street parking in front of their property. I don't know what the
That's
process,
not
okay. So then we shouldn't discuss that.
Well, it's,
Don't even count.
Okay.
I
But
just
there are a
wanted,
few spots out in front that are, I think, I don't know if they're legal street parking with, on Main Street.
Yeah, I think this is
There are two.
technically, yeah, too.
I don't know if they're the same legal side, or.
Can I weigh in on the parking?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Maybe there's the potential not to strike the individual spaces, put a shoulder, and, because if the cars are now parking, subcompact cars can fit in those. Maybe if you just strike a shoulder, then the cars fit. Now, that also leads to disorganized parking, and there might be more space between, and sometimes there'll be less vehicles. So there is the potential that you can get more spaces by not putting a 23-foot required space and just striking a shoulder. You might get 3 cars fitting where 2 technically correct strike spaces are. But that's something that would have to be decided by the board if you want the actual market
Have we
spaces.
done that anywhere else in town? Do we know? I don't know.
I'm not sure on Main Street that would be done because you want the defined spaces and not.
I mean, it's all done on the side
Side
streets.
streets,
Yeah,
exactly.
there's no parking, designated parking spot.
And my
You kind
point
of
is,
park and then hopefully you don't, you know.
this would be a side street where that potentially could work, especially if you're saying 3 cars currently park in spaces that are substandard and it works. Just a thought, this is not a planning board meeting, but a thought meeting at the DRC will be on there.
Wait,
I-
could I ask Andrew a question?
Absolutely.
What would it take to get rid of the post office spots anyway, because they're useless? There's no more there's no more,
No, that's a federal.
That's a federal site, you're
Well,
talking.
Just want to
We
make
have
a
the
comment.
2 spots in front of the old cranberry pizza, those are not post office site.
Right.
spots. Then you have the no parking zone where the.
what is it actually for?
To drop off your mail out front.
So it,
It's not that
that's changed though, and the reason that discussion has happened in a couple other boards too, because that there used to be a drive up, drop off
Right.
spot in that for all 3 mailboxes throughout town, but they were replaced to be only walk-ups. So that drive up area is no longer required. So that's why we think that that would be a good candidate to add parking along Main Street in that position.
But I
And
wouldn't-
it's
I wouldn't-
Not necessarily federal property. It might still be considered, but it would be a county road to work with.
But I think you would have to
Yeah.
go through both the county and the post office. A request would have
That's
to.
why we pay you the big bucks.
Both of those would have to be contacted. Yeah, it's not just the county, because I don't think the county can take spaces away from a post office. But if you go through both of them and they say, it's fine, go ahead, then you
It would be 2 great spots, 3 great spots.
not just for this site, but just on Main Street.
Yeah, 'cause there's so much parking for Gillen Burt's there.
Right. That's not safe, but
So I wouldn't count on that at the moment. Doesn't mean we can't, and that's something we should do here regardless, is like look into that and see if we can.
Certainly, the township could support any discussion with the post office and the county. And I know
Yes.
the township works with the county, so I don't think that isn't a hard.
Yeah.
Mine isn't either.
All right, so.
So that
it's not being
conversation.
recorded.
Start from scratch. Yes, we could look at the post office parking, potentially changing the no parking to parking, but that would have to go through both the post office and the county And if the
So who would initiate that? Would that be the township or us? Would we initiate that through the township or?
Township would have to be the one to initiate it.
Initiate it,
We could
yeah.
Suggest it to them. you know.
Yeah, we could do that. I have no problem suggesting that to them. Okay. But don't count on it at the moment
No, we're
until,
not.
until,
It's open.
yeah, no, it's a very good question. And
Bonus spaces where we think we're not counting it within our counts.
so right now, the suggestion is to consider for the side street, because parking's, you got a lot of things going on that site. And there's not enough parking to support all that. It's short. And you could, I don't know if you want to back me up on that.
I do want to back you up, but there is something called shared parking where I think some analysis could be provided showing that residents park in the evening and commercial businesses, offices could use the parking spaces during the day. You can give some kind of shared analysis showing that that could offset the peak demands. But that being said, if it's a restaurant, that has an evening peak and the residents come back and want to park after work and the restaurants. So that's something to think about in the parking analysis. And I do suggest some parking analysis, maybe some basic trip analysis showing what site trips from the previous and compare it to the maybe even permitted use and then the proposed use.
Hey, Andy, can I ask some follow-up questions of you?
Sure.
So would they have to comply with RSIS, or do we hold them to the standard of the ordinance, which is a little bit different, a little bit less?
You should comply with RSIS. That's my first thought. But this is a little different situation where they don't have the ability to have garages and off-street driveways. It's an urban
At the
setting.
moment.
At the moment. I mean, they do have the ability to provide driveways. With this plan that, as shown, there isn't the space for driveways. If you put one building and have driveway and a garage, certainly that might fit, but it's not consistent with the downtown area where the buildings don't necessarily, the houses, the commercial buildings don't have driveways.
And I guess my second question is, can they count as part of their total parking supply, those on-street spaces, even if they're not designated to this site?
I'm slow to answer that
I
one
know,
because
yeah.
I would say no for the residential, but yes for the commercial because the commercial can use the on-street parking. But that being said, there's a mix here. So they have potentially the off-street parking area provides for the residents at night when they come home and there's that there as long as that isn't taken by.
And you can park overnight here? Yeah.
As long as it's not a commercial vehicle on the main street, yeah.
Right.
When if it's a private car.
How do you determine how many spots per building, like you're saying, it's not enough for that?
Well, we're
but I
gonna
know.
get into that. We're gonna get into that.
Residential and commercial, like you were saying, how do you come up with saying, oh, there's not enough parking? How do we figure that?
The answer is by the ordinance. The ordinance will tell you the ultimate requirement, and then it has to be worked out how the ordinance requirement is met by off-street parking and potentially on-street parking. But you really shouldn't count the on-street parking, but it is available. So that's something in the parking analysis that should be provided, the shared parking, the on-street and off-street, available off-street parking, as well as the available on-street within a reasonable distance.
You use community parking across the street also? That's a big lot. I mean, there's 15, 20
Well, I
spots
know
there.
that. I think, again, I'm trying to, and since this is informal, I could say it here. And
Yeah,
it's
that's what
nothing.
I'm saying.
What works in your favor is that every place that we've tried to work with in Village Commercial Zone, nobody has ever conformed to the parking rules.
Right.
Nobody. So we're not trying to bust your chops to say you got to have it per the ordinance, but as many as we can get is better than not having any, because, you know, we're hopefully this building will be very successful, and whatever you put in there will be a big hit. If it's going to be a restaurant, or which I'm hoping it will be, and something different and new, and a lot of people go there all the time, I think then you're going to have to do what everybody else does. We're going to have to walk from somewhere to go to your restaurant, which is fine because that's what everybody does here in town, and does it in Princeton, and does it in half a dozen other communities in the area. There's never enough parking but we need to
I
try.
just
You
want
have
to
the library
just
overflow,
point out,
too.
there is a provision in this zone, in the ordinance, so it's added in 2020, that if it's an expansion or any renovations or change of use in the village commercial zone, non-residential use, you don't have to provide off-street parking. But there's a little bit of a caveat or a wrench for you guys, which is you're also not allowed to remove any spaces. Right, so yeah.
The way we're thinking about that is we are relocating, but maintaining the 5 existing spaces that are on the site. 3 that are non-ADA, the 2 that are essentially a van loading and an ADA spot. Those are relocated. When we started off with the last version for the HPC, that was all that we relocated, but that was keeping the Brown building in its location by building the new building there and having the building relocated slightly farther west, we're able to double load that parking lot and have the additional 5 spaces on the other side, or 5 or 6 spaces on the other side. So we're able to get significantly more parking spaces, which was the goal, which we were taking from, your direction last time too. We want to make sure we were providing as much parking on site that can all independently use those spots too. If they were driveways leading up, which is something we looked at, having those buildings farther apart and having driveways, you really have to have someone drive. If 2 cars really can park in those, technically in a driveway, but you have to shuffle your cars constantly, and it's madness to constantly have to shuffle your cars in and out to get the one car in the back out, and we don't think that would be very good in the zone either.
Sorry, I have a number of questions, but maybe it's for Andy as well, or just, for you first, do you have to get permission from the township to remove any on-street spaces?
I would presume.
You don't think so? Oh, you do.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
normally if you're changing on-street parking, you'd have to apply and write a letter to the governing body for that change. But, going through the conversation, thinking about, other projects elsewhere and what we've done, in this type of a setting here, and we've worked in Metuchen and Highland Park and in Seabright where they have their own issues because it's seasonal. The expectation for a non-residential use that you're going to get a spot right in front of that storefront is usually
Never happen.
It's not going to happen. It's just the way the world is. But that being said, like our off-street parking that's being provided here is really for the benefit of the residential uses. And other towns and other projects, what we've done is we've restricted things to say like, okay, your residential unit, you get 1 spot at night. Okay, if you're going to have 2 cars, your other car could perhaps go on the side street where no one's there at night. Or elsewhere, but during the day, if somebody wants to come to this property and park in that lot because they want to enter the corner building for what might have been a coffee shop, that's permitted. Are they going to go in that lot? I don't know, because if there's a street spot available, that's going to be closer. They might just go in there and a half hour later they're gone. But, in this type of a setting, there usually are reduced parking expectations. And that's not just me saying it, it's based on various studies because it's a walkable community. Somebody might park 3 blocks away because they're doing business 3 blocks away, and they say, oh, I'm going to walk down there and go to that place also. And they're not really parking on our site or near our site.
Well, I think the ordinance takes that into consideration, actually allows that.
And I just want to add to that too. The only reason that there's 1 parking space being removed is because we're actually fixing the problem of the spaces that were too small to begin with. If we kept the spaces the same size, the parking that is removed for the new apron would shift to where the old apron was. So it would be a 1-to-1 offset, so it wouldn't reduce the count.
Is there currently an apron there?
There's currently an apron that's almost all the way down to the end of the site,
Okay.
and that would be where this spot would go. So it wouldn't remove a space if we didn't fix the parking size, to kind of closer to.
And do you recommend that they do fix the parking size?
I like Andrew's suggestion about maybe just winging it.
You might be taking your chance there because you could have cars that don't park. It might save like a half car space in between the cars.
I know.
It happens. But if you have reasonable residents and reasonable people using the commercial, they'll park and leave most, use as much, as little space as possible to leave room for other folks to park. It's rolling the dice. 23 foot is the requirement, and that will allow cars to easily get in, but then you're gonna see potentially 6 or 7 foot that you would get with the disorganized parking. You're gonna see that between vehicles, because you have a smaller vehicle in a spot, and a smaller vehicle in a spot, and 8 feet between them.
I mean, you also have.
I have a question. With respect to parking, I noticed that on the lot, you have 10 spaces designated, 1 is handicapped, and the 2 next to the handicap, 1's in front of, I assume, that's where you have your dumpster,
Yes.
and then you have a loading area. So now the question is, if you have you have, I guess, up to a maximum of 8 units that residents can live in,
Mhm.
which I assume, you said 1.
No, they were
Yeah.
saying that that's actually not consistent with RSI.
What is ours?
Well,
Depends on bedrooms.
yeah, it's based on bedrooms, and if you,
Yeah.
I mean, have you worked out what your demand would be?
Yeah, so like, for example, a 2-bedroom unit, I think requires, or a 3-bedroom unit requires 2 spaces.
So let's assume it's 1.5 overall average.
Times 8.
Use that as a number, which technically says that you should have 12 spots. You only have 10 on the property. The thing that concerns me is if you have no handicap people, in effect, you're losing a spot because in effect, you've designated this thing handicap. And unless, I know people cheat, but unless you're handicapped, a person's not going to park there. If you have 1 handicap of all your tenants, that's fine. What happens if you have 2 or 3?
Okay,
Are you
so-
going to have to expand the number of handicap spots?
So 2 things about that. One is the way I interpret the ordinance was that you didn't have to add extra parking for replacement residential units that are already on the site. So for example, if the building that had the fire had 2 units in it, we would put 2 units back. We don't have to put parking for those 2 units because they never had parking to begin with. But regarding the ADA, this is almost like EV parking. And in New Jersey, they have this code, which to me is completely illogical, that 1 EV space counts as 2 for the purposes of meeting zoning. But
Okay,
to
so
me-
you have 11, so your 10 becomes 11.
No, it doesn't count extra. What I'm saying is that with the EV spaces, if someone has to park there and they don't have an EV car and that actually meets zoning because it counts as 2 spaces, to me, that should be a deduction space, that it shouldn't count for anything. But this is what the state did, this is what they want. So with ADA, it's all federally mandated. They say for a parking lot under 25 spaces, you need 1 ADA spot.
Okay,
So like we would design to comply with ADA, I can't stop someone from parking there that doesn't need the accessibility space. But if somebody is parking there and somebody enters a site that needs another ADA space, the federal government doesn't have a guideline to compel you to add more. But when you look at like medical facilities or things like assisted living, they generally do provide more of those types of spaces because it's anticipated that they're going to be needed.
yeah, okay.
There is an ADA spot across the street.
Okay, now the 2 spots, that are the one in front of the dumpster and the one in front of the loading area. If cars are parked there, how does, I assume the garbage truck somehow lifts the dumpster out of that shed?
They're cans. The cans get brought out to the street.
Yeah. So you mean a garbage truck is not going to be coming in here?
No, this is not a dumpster area where there's like a big,
Well, but that is a dumpster for the business that's going to be where the old Cranberry Pizza was, and they produce garbage. Any of, I assume that there's certain minimum requirements for retail or commercial spaces that say for every 100 square feet, you're going to assume a certain number of people are going to produce a certain number of waste, garbage. So what you're telling me is that whatever these facilities or businesses produce, everything's going to be put into that waste shed,
that's for the front two buildings.
and then the truck is going to have to park along the side street here and literally manually remove this stuff and never go in there to try to retrieve it. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
whoever has trash has to move those cans to be picked up.
Oh, so you're saying that the people who reside there will move the cans to the street?
Yeah, I mean, any residence or, any type of business that has curbside pickup, that would be a responsibility that you have to put the garbage
I mean, I
out.
know as a resident in
Yeah.
Cranberry, I always move this waste disposal can to the curb, and then they come and they dump it. So you're saying the same thing, same requirement is going to exist?
But do you have where the waste truck has an automated arm or it's
Well, yeah, we
guys?
have the automatic arm, but for some reason, there's a guy hanging on the rear of the truck. He opens the lid, pulls out 2 bags and dumps them. Some truck garbage companies use the thing and lift it and flip
So-
it. Some don't.
So trash and
I'm sorry, wait.
trash is is not a public pickup. It's
It's
a private pickup. So it depends on the final,
Yes.
the company that gets chosen. Some are just, picking up, some have the arms. The goal, and this is consistent with a lot of other Main Street buildings, is to have the enclosure house the commercial for the front building and the residential for the front building. The rear 2 buildings are the trash area is undefined for those on the plans. That's the zoning officer doesn't have those defined. Those would be individual cans also as well that would be within an alleyway space. If you notice too, I didn't point this out earlier, but within the alleyway between the 2 buildings would also house the mechanical units for those buildings, so they also would not be visible from public, less seen and out of sight, but would be intended to be rolled down the alleyway and out to the street for pickup.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm satisfied with the parking. I'll go by whatever Andrew says, and my other comments will wait for some later discussion.
Thank you.
Wayne, we could use the library overflow too, right? When that was built?
Push the button.
When that was built, I think the library parking lot was supposed to be for overflow also. So you have 3 community parking spots, the street, the one community lot,
But
and the
normally if
library.
a resident parks their car, they're going to want to be in eyesight of their car on the street, not park it up in the library.
Well, They figured they would use that to go to town also, so.
Oh, well, that's a different story. Yes,
All right, but it's parking.
right.
So I know what you're saying.
Andrew, what about the garbage situation? Steve brings up a good point that then elsewhere in the village commercial area that people bring the cans out, even though I'm not sure what the Cranberry Pizza does, if they have somebody come in and forklift. I think they do in the back of the Cranberry Pizza.
Now they put it on Park Place. 'Cause I go there for
Off the
breakfast.
side.
I see they have Lido's, Cranberry Pizza. They wheel it out at the park.
All right.
And the guy comes in the middle of the street like ours. They pick it. They just pick them. I see.
And I think this would be similar, but they had mentioned private versus public collection. If it's a private collection, they can schedule it twice a week if necessary. In other words, if they find the cans getting filled up, there may be more than once a week. They can manage that. The residents would typically be the once a week, but the commercial may require to keep it in the smaller can that's rollable that they could bring out to the curb. If it's necessary, they could, manage the trash collection. So that's a possibility too. And I don't know if that occurs with Cranberry Pizza. Maybe they do fill them more than once and there's an additional truck that comes in for them. I'm guessing they try and get it in, if there's public pickup, they're trying to,
Well, there is no
Just-
public
and-
pickup.
Okay.
And I just
private,
want to do
okay.
a quick reminder that even though this was the former Cranberry Pizza building, Cranberry Pizza's not associated with this project. It's just the former Cranberry Pizza building. So just,
But you're
as-
gonna
it's
have
always
a
going to be called that.
world-renowned business that's a
Very
restaurant in that building
successful.
there, that
What is-
everybody's gonna wanna come to.
And they're
One-
going to create
And
a
you're
lot
gonna
of
create a lot of
trash, so we
garbage.
should-
Right. Well, I
So
mean,
remember that.
it's a really good point though, because one of the things with as far as peak time usage, we don't have a tenant assigned currently to the site. Now, if it was more of a morning type peak time than a nighttime peak time, that would offset usage also. Like let's say like a bagel shop or something along those lines may also be very desirable in town. Tenants, we know who you can contact the people behind us in here in the room, but there's undefined tenants at this point. So it may not be a restaurant. There's also additional infrastructure that we required for a restaurant or some other type of building, which would require additional mechanically inside and on the exterior of the new front main building. I tried to accommodate that with the design, having mechanical spaces that run up the center spline of the building and have, instead of windows in that space, have potential louvers that look like closed shutters to mimic the look of a closed shutter, but be a louver. Also a roof dormer, potential roof dormers that could be used to hide rooftop units or rooftop exhaust of some kind too. So trying to mimic the old vernacular, but limit the amount of mechanical systems that are visible from the post office. It's also something that is something to comment on now is with any kind of a restaurant space in the current configuration of the building with a lower roof along the post office, any mechanical space that goes into there would be much more visible. You have the hoods, the vents, everything much more visible from that side. Having them higher up away from the ground, away from the courtyard, keeps them off of the streetscape, keeps them off of the view. So we've put some thought into that too. We want to hide, we want to follow all of the historic guidelines, the documents that are within the guidelines of the town. And we also want to just go with good practices for minimizing these views.
Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Mm-hmm.
In regard to that alley, it's only 4 feet wide.
Yeah, I know.
I don't
know.
see how you could do mechanicals in there and trash. Matter of fact, mechanicals, if they were like mini splits and they were up in the air above 6 feet or something, then that would work, but you couldn't put them on the ground.
There is that, which is.
Okay, well, that's what was said before, that there could be for mechanicals. Yeah, and then in terms of trash, a lot of these bigger trash cans are pretty wide, and 4 feet, you're not gonna be able to pass two, that's for sure. I would think the best thing to do would be to have a small trash area in the back, behind those 5 spaces on that side. Because if you have commercial units in those two back buildings, they're gonna need very close to what a dumpster would be as opposed to cans.
Mhm.
Even the front will need that. So it may be not realistic to think you're gonna do cans with, especially if you get a restaurant, because then all of a sudden you got bottles and cans and you have trash. So I would think that would be a way to, I think would pose a need for some type of either a small 3 or 5 yard dumpster each side in some type of area that was screened and hidden generally from the public. It'd work better for the residences too, because they'd have a place to put things as opposed to just having cans. I could see the cans sitting on the street all week because there's really nowhere for them to be.
What I'd like to do is circle back around, and I want to divide this up into 2 parts here. The front 2 buildings and then the back 2 buildings. Okay. So I'd like to focus on the front 2 buildings, the main building and the corner building that are on Main Street. First, I would like to compliment you, Stephen. You did an excellent job here, and in my opinion, of creating the visual streetscape. So if I'm standing in the middle of, the intersection in front of Park, is that Park Place there, and I'm looking across the street, I'm looking at the visuals of both buildings, and they have a very good match, and I think you took that into consideration. So that I want to compliment you on that. I don't know how people feel about the larger building in general. I mean, I think you took and incorporated everything that I think we were looking for in that. I don't know if anybody has any, feelings about that, taking the parking and the trash out for a second. I think those two buildings, yeah, go ahead.
I was, if I remember right, at the meeting we had originally, I was the one that made it an issue about the height of the building with respect to the post office. Am I right?
You are right, yes.
Yeah, so I made that issue. So I'm looking at SK01.
Yep.
This-
Sure
this
thing.
drawing.
Yes.
And you're showing the basically elevation view and you're trying to compare, what exists and what it's going to look like. And you got those dotted lines.
Yeah.
And my question was.
It's really just a reference line.
I realize that, and you were trying to show similarity and all that, but why wasn't the post office dotted line showed at the peak of the roof instead of where the gutter line is?
Because I'm showing where the front facades are, not necessarily where the roof,
No, because
back rear
basically I'm
gutter.
looking, see, I guess I was looking over here and I saw the elevation here and you went to the peak, the roof.
Sure, I could have brought over Teddy's, which is essentially Teddy's there. I could have brought that.
See, and then I
line
saw
down
this
with
one
the
and I said,
facade.
gee, if you wanted to show similarity, that line would have just. gone
It's
to
more of a flow
Right.
path, not necessarily a hard defined line. So what it really is, what's deceiving in the elevation too is that how far back that post office is from the line. So it's just showing kind
It's
of
a
the general.
spatial
Oh, so
difference.
basically you're saying because it's set back, you made a compensation
Yes.
Right.
to bring the line
And-
down.
Yes, and also that also why I'm showing a pure 2D elevation and also a 3D perspective of the mass.
Right, because if you look where the old Cranberry Market was, on the corner there.
Yeah,
it
Which is
looked
right,
Right on the street, but
Yeah.
Stephen
Yeah.
brings up a good point. The post office sits back off the street by 40+ feet probably.
so it gives
At
an
least
effective
it's
reduction
so-
in height.
But
Yes.
if you're looking at it overall from Main Street, it all seems to flow better than what it did before.
Yeah.
Do you agree on that?
Yes,
Yeah.
And
yes, absolutely.
And Richard, on SKO2, there is a perspective view of the side looking at the post office courtyard. So that also is a good view to look at as far as perspective usage. What the
Yeah,
banding on the first floor and some of the forms that are used are more in line with trying to match the coursing of the post office height to carry that line around the courtyard and really make it feel like a cohesive courtyard in that space. And then having the material change above that line, breaks up the massing of the building.
No, it was obvious when I first saw this thing that I said, boy, he really brought that height of that building down because before, would you bring it down to by 7-8 feet?
Well, the back part of the building was the biggest contention last
Right.
time, and that was taller because of the change in height grade of the site. So not having that there definitely helps also, and we're able to have that down a couple feet. It was able to,
Okay,
we're well under the 35-foot mean height of the gable roof, and
if I
and
remember
then-
right, originally you were over the 35 feet.
We actually were still under the 35-foot for the mean height of the gable roof. That's what the code defines the height of the building as. For good measure and just for your reference on here, I did show the gate top of the ridge of the gable, but that's not what's defined as the code height of the building. It's the mean height of the gable, basically halfway up the ridge line is considered the building code height. So, I mean, it's just a code thing,
Visuals aside,
but I'm also showing, but in order to show that, for good measure in here, I'm showing that we are also trying to keep the ridge under a total floor to ridge height of under 35 feet. It's slightly up higher than the grade height to floor to ridge, but we're also not trying to, we've gotten the requirements that we feel we need and without trying to go higher than that. So we're really, it's a struggle for me to keep the height down too. So
okay.
And Liz, what do you think about about the front of the building and how it looks proportionally and everything?
I actually really like it.
And like now if we swing around to Park Place and look in on the first two buildings, I think again everything seems to blend in there. You have the patio areas out in the back, which I like for businesses, the people to come outside and eat, which is always good.
Also, the one of the main elevation, you can see the dotted line also for that follows the facade of the existing Victorian building on the side street, and that's because that's the closest to the streetscape. So it doesn't include the roof of that also, but it's really what you experience as you're walking by is that mass, the height of the facade. Now, purposely the banding for the retail space does not wrap around the back of the building. So when you look at the perspective from the rear of the building, it follows more the form of a residential building with, even going as far as the decreasing window size as the building increases up in height, and change in shutters from panel shutters to louver shutters. Little things like that follow along with the vernacular of the historic town, and kind of appear more, designating it more as the residential area, even though it's the residential entrance point and exit point. So it also helps as somewhat of a wayfinding measure, where people looking for that commercial space will see the banding and know where to go, not be confused by that. You have less people going in and out of the residential door, ideally, and things like that, or trying to go in and out of it.
Now, you mentioned louvered shutter versus panel shutter. I wasn't going to bring it up. Are these synthetic, fake louvers, or are they real louvered?
The hope is to use a composite louver that will appear to be operable, but not necessarily be operable. That would be very consistent with what's used in other areas of the town. It's, it won't be a vinyl shutter that is attached and looks completely fake and is attached to the wrong portion of the window frame. Some of the other developments or other fake shutters that have been put on buildings, they even locate it in the wrong position. So we'd make sure to have it in the correct position to appear to be operable and that kind of thing.
Because I
But
personally,
not personally.
on my house, I had the fake aluminum shutters for 50 years, and I finally went ahead and said, no, I don't like them. I went in for the vinyl panel shutters, and people actually complimented me that they look much nicer.
Nice. Yeah. If it's as long as they're the composite that follow along with the guidelines of the historic district, that's really what we're aiming to do. It did bring up another point.
Now, with your windows, are you going to have to go with the really fancy split windows and everything?
We'll also follow the guidelines for the historic.
Okay. All right.
Where the windows that get chosen.
Maybe that's your carte blanche thing. We're going to follow everything that's in the historic guidelines. Just
it is. Yeah.
After we just passed the doggone thing about 2 weeks ago. So
Well, one thing during the historic commission review that we did, we were proposing, this goes along with kind of fresh air and some other things that came up during COVID, not necessarily as top of mind anymore, but the first floor windows that are within that paneled retail space. The proposal for that actually is to use a company that does, they essentially look like double hung windows, but then when you're able to actually louver the
right. I remember you showed those.
open.
Yeah.
So if you're, they actually fold up to the ceiling, so you'd have it completely open.
So when they open those windows, there's no screened area.
There could potentially be a screened area, but there may not be a screened area. Depending on the tenant, that would be how appropriate it is to do something like that, because you wouldn't necessarily want to have bugs and things.
In my house, I put in color windows, double color 609s, and they actually have a follow roller screen. So when you lift the bottom,
Right.
the screen, so
Yes.
it's beautiful because there's no slope.
It essentially rolls down. I think that would be something that would get incorporated with this kind of setup. They have versions that fold outward, and they have versions that fold inward. There may be a mix of those depending. So the corner ones can both be open at the same time because they both open inward to hit each other. That's a minor, it's a detail that will be worked out with the plans get developed further. This is still shown as reference. Some of the floor layout plan, they're shown as intent, design intent. They may get adjusted, but we're wanting to show you what the intended unit count is and the usage, and really get that in front of you so that there's no surprise. I know that one of the other comments too was about the basement, whether or not the basement would get used in the future for, additional space for residential. That would not happen at all. But we basically have the requirement of the business, and the requirement of the residential, just purely for utility and storage in the basement, are going to essentially fill that space. And there may be a commercial component that needs to be incorporated into the basement level, but that would be crossed when with the tenant application and that kind of thing.
All right, so I think based on what I wanted to try to accomplish, and again, I'm focusing on the front part of the property. I think everybody's kind of in agreement, maybe with respect to the parking, I think maybe still outstanding. There's things that got to be answered to that. And I actually do like your trash shed. I thought it was an outhouse at first initially, So if you want to carve a little moon in the side, it'll be appropriate for other places in town here. So, but I think the placement of that is fine. I think that, the whole trash collection and pickup is going to have to be worked out with the people on site and probably maybe a little more thought in that, how that can be addressed.
One thing I forgot to mention too, as far as the building access to the basement, there is through the center core access to the basement, but just adjacent to that loading dock and adjacent to the trash area, there's a small extension off the back of the main building. That small extension is essentially a roofed area that houses the stairs directly to the basement. So you can access the basement level from that loading area also. So you can load directly to the basement or to the first floor from that same spot.
That should have an arrow showing downward.
Yes, they're
There's no arrow showing up or down.
on which plans?
I'm looking at,
The site plan?
I'm looking at sheet 3 of 11.
Yeah, and it's all about still showing the intent. So that probably wasn't covered on that, but that's fine.
Going down to the basement.
Yeah, that would be that. Those are stairs that go directly to the basement level, and then there's essentially be able to a corridor carved out from the center egress stairs to that staircase. But then really the majority of the basement is able to be open. That would be a clear floor area in that one zone. But everything else in the basement could be used. So.
Since you brought up loading, I know we talked about parking and trash. Loading will have to be thought out too, because any loading done in the parking area will block parking spaces from coming and going. So that will have to be done, and something to consider for any deliveries to the site. I know.
For the world-class restaurant that's going to be.
That's a lot of. So we did consider that, and we talked about it last time. There's a mix of how that gets done in town too that we've noticed is that it either can go from trucks that feel comfortable pulling all the way up to the door, maybe smaller box trucks or smaller trucks that vans and such that can drive and back up all the way to the back of the parking lot and do it for a quick delivery. But there are other Main Street buildings that what they do is they're essentially parking along the street and carrying their deliveries up with hand trucks and dollies and things like that to the back door. So,
and this will also have to work for the residents who order their Amazon and UPS trucks and all the other box trucks. I don't think it will be pulling into the parking lot. It probably will be done from the street, or that's something that should be.
They always usually park in a close enough area where it's out of the way and then run back and forth. Or unfortunately, you do get them that just park in the middle of the street sometimes, and that happens everywhere. So unfortunately.
Just a quick question. I noticed along the Park Place side, it says repair sidewalk is needed. Is it safe to assume that along Main Street, all that sidewalk's being replaced? Because it's pretty crappy right now and dangerous, quite frankly.
Yes, the intent there is to connect the area where the tree previously was, which is why there's no sidewalk that was done during the town beautification project. It skipped that area because a larger tree was in that area. We're proposing that the brick be continuous in that area all the way through the sidewalk at the same height so that can continue, and to have matching bluestone within the other areas out there to provide other pedestrian access. It's hard to start carving that corner out for other tree space and things because of the movement of people in that corner. So we think that actually even reducing the shrubbery that's in front of the Victorian building, bringing that a little tighter to the building, but still have some landscaping there. But would allow for even more bluestone in that area too, on either side of the sidewalk, on the street side and the building side. And then currently there's a concrete pad in front of the 63 North Main building, and that will be also proposed, I believe it's proposed to be a bluestone also in that area on either side.
Okay.
About the site, if I'm not only one for civil. Mark, is it possible you can increase the pipe size on those pipes from 12 to 15, from 6 to 10 at least? You have some pretty small piping for your drainage. That's it. I looked at the grades, it looks like it works with the inverts in the top pipe. Thank you.
So now anybody else have any questions about the front part of the property? Then I want to go back to the back part of the property where we're going to rip down the existing houses and build 2 identical houses, 4 times as big as the houses that are already there. So I have a little bit of a problem with that.
One of the reasons that you get the large increase as far as 4 times as big is there currently are unusable basement areas in
Right.
the back. The brown building has a smaller footprint, unusable, unfinished basement, and the gray building has no basement. The new buildings that are going in order to, for the size that you're seeing, we are counting the basements in those buildings as finished space. Those back buildings will have finished basements with a bedroom. The intent is for a bedroom, a family room, and then some amenities in between, like the closets, but also laundry potentially in the basement. And the bedroom that's in the back of that will have an egress well that will lead up to next to the porches. So that's what you see on the side there. So the in between the porches, where you see a kind of a wall, there's the intent is to have an egress window, an egress well that leads from the basement space. So some of that increased square footage is underground that's not being seen. So they are getting bigger. They definitely are, and I'm not trying to hide that fact. But it may not be as drastic as far as some of that being underground, more utilized space rather than all above ground.
In terms of footprint,
Yeah, let's,
Yeah.
What's the difference in terms of the existing footprint versus what is being proposed? Do you have those numbers?
Yeah. I can give them the numbers. The brown building is about 690 square foot footprint, and the gray building is about 960 square foot footprint. And then you got, the new building is 1328 square foot footprint
Both of them.
each. They're identical.
So 2,600 square feet footprint. And what's the other 2?
Yes.
What's the original 2?
You're talking about, say, 690 plus 960.
And those GSF numbers, those include the porches and the front covered porches and the rear covered porch and the egress wells, anything that's incorporated with the building. But,
So and the new building, the footprint's 1,300 square feet?
1328 each.
So you got about another 1,000 square feet.
I don't know if I'm on, but yes. What's the problem like that you're seeing that?
Well, the problem is that we're tight on parking. You've got, you're another 1,000 square feet you're taking up from the site. If the buildings were smaller, maybe you can put some parking in an alley behind the buildings. I don't know. I don't know how everybody else feels. I mean, both buildings are identical. Do we want 2 identical buildings right next door to one another? I mean, it's not that it wasn't you see on Main Street, every building that's next to one another, there's no buildings that are really the same, although, so that's a concern too. It may be something where you could make one building a little different than another or whatever.
No, I can answer because, we've been talking about this for quite some time and aesthetically, I mean, I don't think there's an issue changing the facade of one of the buildings to look a little dissimilar than the other one to create more interest. But the two buildings that are on the property today are like horribly obsolete.
No, I'm not,
And-
I'm not even disagreeing that.
But I know we could look at numbers and say, hey, we're at 1328, but it's a big increase, another 1,000, whatever. And the types of units that people are looking for today are totally different from what's available on the property right now. Now, most of the projects that come into my office, they're a mess. There's wetlands, there's stream corridors, they're in a flood hazard area. There's wooded areas where you can't cut down a tree, everything's like a science experiment. This project's not like that. This is actually a project that's entirely based on character and aesthetics. And I think the most important thing to the public who will be at the meeting, what am I going to see when I walk down the street? And I don't think anybody in the room has any doubt that the way this is laid out and designed is not visually appealing. I think it would be better to keep the visual appeal rather than to try and squeeze in more asphalt somewhere and pave over some more green area. The types of the units that are being presented here tonight, the people that are going to live there are going to be in those units because they want to be in this setting.
No,
So-
I'm not disagreeing with you. on
Okay.
that. I'm just trying to say, how does it work for the site? And again, I separated the back part of the property from the front part of the property because they're really two distinct, I kind of look at them as two distinct kind of projects. And the only reason I'm bringing this up too is because there's another project in town where it got recently approved and now is being built, where everything is quote unquote shoved up against one another and people are not happy about that at all. And I hear about it every day of the week. How did you do that? And I didn't even do that. So I'm just trying to bring that to your attention so we.
Yeah, definitely. And we're very aware of that project too. And that would be, I believe, in an RLD3 or
Right.
RLD1 zone, which is much different than the VC zone. So
Right.
we're really trying to carry along the character and aesthetic of the VC. And the Village Commercial has, really the significant portion of the Village Hamlet Residential also. We really based a lot of these buildings, not exact duplicates or not exact vernacular. Like you're saying, we want to be a little bit different to show that it's its own building. We're not trying to copy the history. We're not trying to replicate history. We're trying to respect the history. So we want to show them in a way where it's in line with what would be built in the Village Commercial District. So definitely different zones, and it has been considered the RLD1 or RLD3. The fact that those are so close together is pretty ridiculous. But it's it's a different kind of design aesthetic, and we're really going for appropriateness on the site. And another reason why we're not trying to put 4 of these next to each other or anything like that. We're trying to walk a fine line of getting as much parking off street as possible, maximizing that, but also providing some screening and better streetscape for from the loading dock and post office loading dock to the area, making it a much nicer walk through into the library. And actually, I didn't mention on one of these things, but we actually are showing or proposing that we put a crosswalk in from the end of this sidewalk at the back towards the post office turn across the street to the affordable housing, so that there's an actual defined crosswalk in that area too, because that is another problem that's along that road, is the better connection walkability to the library. And we're aware of that, and we think crossing the street at that location would allow for other project to connect that. But it would lead into the sidewalk at the affordable housing, which would be a safe walk to the library.
So Liz, would you have a problem leaving then the footprint, but maybe changing the facade a little bit?
I think that was a good point, that the facade should be different, just that's more consistent with the historic district. So, just to have it be more visually interesting. I mean, one concern I have, and I wish we'll get into review because I people are asking this, which is, they are so close together, and that facade that's between them is blank, right?
Not totally. If you look at, sorry. Yeah, if you look at the, I've just got to find which sheet it is, but it's one of the floor plan drawings for XK6. So you got it right first. That shows the floor plan. Oh, sorry, the floor plan might be SK2.
SK3?
So SK3, sorry, has the back two buildings floor plan, and there's flexibility in the floor plan to stagger the first floor windows so that the windows along the alleyway don't line up perfectly with each other, but they're essentially serving the same rooms inside the building, but they would be in different locations inside the same room of the building. So there's a stagger effect so that you don't have a direct view in. The second floor would have no windows on that side. There's also the two center units are going to have, just by the way it's laid out, less windows on the second floor, but they're essentially bonus windows on the two outside buildings, which would make those two units maybe more desirable than the inner units. But you still have the way that's blocked out. It's not a very deep building, which there have been some other recent developments in town where they're extremely deep buildings with only windows on the front facade and back facade, and party walls, especially when they're 4 units connected with party walls. When you have something that deep, the light is not penetrating as deeply into the building. But with this, essentially you have bathrooms in the middle with bedrooms on the outside. So you're able to get the natural light into the bedroom space. You may have a bathroom in the second floor of the center units that don't have a window, but would still be vented. So it's a trade-off. You lose a window in a bathroom.
Has the fire company blessed off on something like this? Is this something that we have a problem with, only a 4-foot alley in between buildings? Or is that kind of like, like worst nightmare, scenario? Or
There's a lot of main trees. That's actually space.
well, that's actually space.
But there's a lot of room to pull up.
Okay, I just wanted
I do
to.
like what you said
That's usually my
about,
question.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to ask it?
I do like what you said about the,
Like different styles, so you don't have like cookie cutter, that's sort of what you're talking, right? Yeah, but I think the sides are good. They could have went with retail, honestly, if they wanted,
Right.
but I think this is better.
Oh, I'm not, I
like the flow.
The whole site is, everybody's waiting for you to start doing something with the site. Everybody, that's the next one. Like, when's something gonna happen with that property? I said, well, they're working on it.
and I do like that they took a lot of
Time to do the sides, like I said, looking from the pizza parlor,
Right.
going down towards the post office, and also here, when you walk down Main, you would look at the side of that, it's really nice looking, even if you came out of the library looking back.
Right,
really
no,
looks-
I think you've got 360-degree views
Yeah.
that are covered. I think, all right, I will yield on the footprint of the site of the buildings, but I think if you can mix it up a little bit somehow, just change the two so they're not cookie cutter from one another. Keep the same footprint type of a situation. I think the two main things are really the parking and your trash removal delivery type of scenario, where you're going to have to come in and really, just kind of really explain how that's all really going to work. Because I think you're almost there. I mean, if you came to me and said, well, Waste Management has a little truck they could pull in and, you know, they can, that's good. You know what I mean? Then that means it shows you've already asked the question of some waste hauler that, you know, can handle this stuff. Cause it just, I'm not liking the idea of people dragging stuff out to the street and, you know, if it gets out, it gets out. And what if they miss bringing it out and, you know.
It's very common in the industry to bring garbage from almost the very rear of the property to the street along Main Street to have removal done. It, you know, it may appear to be, you know, a hardship to do or some kind of difficulty, but it's very common for Main Street.
No, I drag my garbage can out. It's probably 125 feet from the back of my property out to the road.
If they're
Yeah,
totes
so
with the big
my
wheels,
house,
they're
it's
not
the same
bad,
way.
you know. I mean,
The trash enclosure with
So.
cans that are in the back, they get rolled out by them.
The 94-gallon wheel contains.
Smaller containers, right?
that's what I mean. They're between the Pizza Parlor now, Teddy's, and Lido's. They probably put out 20. They wheel them out. I'm out there early morning biking or whatever, and I see it. I'm like, man, that's a lot, but that's what they have to do. And they're neatly put in like a bin. This is even neater than what's there now.
Right.
So I mean, I know you're concerned about it, but you know, it is.
Well, people are going to be, yes.
You know what I'd suggest? A strong operations statement that discusses the site,
Yes.
operations, trash, delivery, all of the things we're discussing tonight, but a statement that puts this on record that everybody could see and review, as well as maybe a brief parking and traffic analysis showing the trip difference from what existed to what's now, so we know what the trip increase would be, and then the parking off-street, on-street required for the existing, required for the proposed. Those type of things will go a long way to support the major concerns that might be had in town.
David, anything from the engineering side that we need to?
Just what I said. I didn't go through the whole drainage report or anything. But I would like to make a comment about the trash again, and that's that let's not repeat the mistakes of the past, if you want to call them mistakes. We're planning a new site with new people that might come into town that don't understand how Cranberry works. So let's make it easy for them and create a situation where maybe they don't have to, especially the commercial, don't have to roll cans out like some of the existing restaurants do in town, because that's really not the way to do it.
And I'd even say the residential as well, because if you're going to have 8 units in those 2 buildings, you're going to have 8 trash cans pulled out in the morning when they go to work, and they're not coming home until 6, 7 at
Right,
night.
they'll
So there's going
sit
to be 8 trash cans. So if it's addressed by units in the parking area or something, and certainly in the leases, it'll be addressed that you have to.
Recycling and
in.
trash, all of a sudden you double the amount of cans you
Right.
have to have, which means it's a lot. Different days, maybe.
Corner, like you were saying, is good too.
Yeah.
Your trash truck could back in there and hit the left corner. You never even see them. To your point, they won't be in the street. You know, that's a
Right.
good idea. And I see the truck. You could call Waste Management or Central Jersey. They'll come out and give you a site analyst.
A trash truck can back in and drive
yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Well, they have smaller ones too.
Right. Yeah. That's.
But even, it's 24 feet, you can do it.
Yeah, but if you have all cars parked there, if you have cars parked in front,
Well, it may be that employees have to park in that one side with the trash, right? So,
The middle's wide open.
you know, or you just set it up for early morning, so there's
no, but you
there's
have
nobody there.
parking spaces right in front of the.
But think
where
about
the
time
shed
of
is.
day if you have residents and morning time with the.
Yeah,
Sure.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Liz, from your standpoint, what do you?
I have a
Look,
couple of housekeeping
This is
items,
just-
actually. One is just, I wasn't clear
So, yeah.
reading it that.
I'll get to you.
Oh, sorry, that the lot was being consolidated, the 2 lots. So I think it would just, if you could make that a little bit clearer, because when I looked at the site plan, it looked like the lot numbers were still there.
Correct. Actually, this issue came up very recently, I want
Okay.
to say in the last 2 weeks, but we discussed it and we can consolidate.
I think that's great. I mean, I think that's preferable, but I wasn't sure if that was what was going on. And so the other thing just having to do with the zone table is it is a corner lot. And so you should probably note on the zone table, the setbacks, because you have to abide by the setbacks, the front yard setbacks on both frontages, and just to make that clear. The third thing, and I hate to bring this up, but I think it would be remiss if we didn't ask about affordable housing. You know, if you're putting 8 new units, would one of them, when like perhaps in the larger building, would you consider one of them being affordable? something to think about. I mean, it typically
Is it required?
if you do more than 5 units, you have to do at least one affordable. So
How does that
that's-
calculation work if you're not doing a net increase of 5 units on the property? Like some of the units are already there today. So,
That's true, if it's 5 new ones, but that's true. But if it's not but you're redoing that building, no?
well, like for example, in the rear, we have three units between 2 buildings in the rear, which if those 2 buildings are removed, and 2 new buildings are built, it'll be 4 units.
Oh, it's not a net, if they're new
Mhm.
construction, then it's typically what it is. I'm not entirely sure you are going to be required to do it. I think
Mhm.
that I'm just asking because this is
You
such.
you should mull it over.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And then, now, you had a.
I just want to follow up. I think you made the point about the pipes for the stormwater. So just to clarify, and you might want to present this going forward. So you have the increases in the runoff, I guess, is that all scheduled to be piped, all the excess from the current?
That was the intent. In other words, the majority of that increase is attributed to the parking lot
Right.
itself. Our original strategy for that parking lot was we were going to try and do something, more creative, like porous asphalt.
Yeah, I was going to suggest.
No, we actually had a design for it, and we calculated the volumes we needed, and then we received the soils report on the property. We did 3 soil borings out there, and all 3 came back clay. So we took a sample to the lab. We ran a permeability test. It was like a 1/2 inch an hour permeability, which is not very useful for stormwater management, and certainly not available to us for porous asphalt. So we had ended up changing our plan to reflect just collecting the water to make sure it doesn't pool, tying in whatever roof drains we can so that there's no nuisance ponding, and then putting it into the existing storm sewer. But when I look at the actual numbers, on the calculation, this is like a rounding error, the whole project. This is not a significant increase in runoff in any way. And we don't trigger any state requirements for stormwater management because we're under that 1 acre of disturbance or the 1/4 acre of new impervious. So, I don't have any concern about stormwater management. I am sorry we can't do the porous asphalt, but with the clay there, it's never going to work.
I want to extend on that.
Mhm.
What percentage impervious are you now versus what is the impervious percentage going to be when you're finished if the project goes as shown? And Liz, what is our requirement for maximum impervious for this particular site?
Well, it's lot coverage. Lot coverage is 60% allowed, and they're doing 86.3%. So they are above.
But what is it now?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not on the plans. I have the number, but I have to see if it's, hold on a second. Readable on here. Someone's phone, I think. No.
That's my favorite subject. I have to give you an updated.
You've got to be increasing the impervious coverage. I got to believe it. No, I am. It's 0.12 over.
So is that going to require a variance?
Yeah, we were requesting, yeah.
Okay.
See, I know the 2 rear buildings have larger footprints, and I'm not sure about the
The parking area is the
area,
real reason.
which I assume is paved versus originally it was gravel.
Stone, yeah.
Well, the gravel's not considered impervious either.
I know it's considered impervious, yeah.
But,
No problem.
Don't know the number.
No, we're going from like 6,000 to 12,809
With the parking lot,
with the parking lot.
that makes sense.
So you're doubling the amount of impervious. And that includes the stone, so the stone is already included in the 6? I mean, the way the stormwater rules are written, if you put down stone and drive on it, it's supposed to be included as impervious. Right.
Okay.
Wait, can you please repeat what you just said? When you put stone down, it's considered,
If you drive on it, it's considered impervious.
it's considered impervious.
Impervious, correct.
Okay, I thought you said pervious.
No, if you plant the
Okay,
tree in
it's
the
considered
middle of
imper-
it,
Yeah, it's
you
considered.
call it a landscape bed, then they give you the.
Yeah,
benefit
okay.
of doubt.
So I would like to, I think you want to do the calculation and see, if it's a small increase, then it's
That's
not
not
an
a
issue.
small increase.
No, it looks like it's about a 50% increase.
It's a,
A 50%.
50% increase,
Actually, it's a 100% increase.
right.
Right? It's about 100%.
It's with the parking lot.
Because of the parking lot.
I understand, but
It's currently grass.
so now, so if that's the case, how is this stormwater going to be handled?
so it's handled by the existing system that's there, but when it comes to stormwater management, I don't know if it's fair to say, oh.
When you say, as you mean the townships?
Yeah, we're gonna connect.
Stormwater
connect.
management.
They will
Stormwater
pipe-
management.
Pipe
Right.
into the stormwater system.
So a 50% increase doesn't concern anybody?
Well, the numbers are relatively small because the site is small
Okay.
compared to the whole thing. I haven't looked at the drainage calculations yet, but what he's proposing is that it goes into the inlet that's on Park, which then runs down to Main Street and will run down.
Into the brook.
Into the brook?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Like I was saying, when it comes to stormwater, if you have, let's say, a 500 square foot patio in your backyard and you add 500 square feet, okay, you're doubling it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a huge increase in runoff. Like it's not necessarily that you can tie everything to a percentage.
Yeah, it's like in the tenths of a CFS.
It's a rounding
I think.
error.
But it's going to go to the county. You're going to have to get county
Yeah.
approval.
We do.
So we'll see if they make any comments because the county system is what's going to convey it to the stream.
Okay,
I know.
okay, thank you.
I have one because we're going to have to unfortunately kick you out. Because we do have another 16 hours of meetings tonight, unfortunately. But I have one final question. The trees that are there, are you going to have to take any trees down? Because there's a lot of large trees that are along the street there. Are they
Yeah.
coming down or?
There's one street tree that has to come down to make way for our new entrance. It's a 24-inch oak.
Right.
And then there's some smaller trees that are scattered throughout the property. In fact, they're to the front left of the middle building.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be removed.
Okay.
These are not large trees, though.
Right.
There's some other smaller trees in like the middle area between the court, I guess you could call it a courtyard, that would be removed. We also have a landscape plan where we're proposing new trees. So like,
Yeah, I would say, make sure,
We reached out to Shade Tree. We just, there's not a comfort level to discuss it until it's at the planning board phase for submission. So we'll be following back up with them, but we're staying in contact and we're making sure that we're discussing with them.
now, I think some housekeeping items, the one
If I could
that,
just.
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
trees. Item number 61 now on the checklist is that you have to submit to the Shade Tree Commission as part of your application package. So I know you submitted here for DRC, and when you submit to the actual planning board, you're going to have to also do a Shade Tree Commission, which is not a big deal, but you do it.
And it happens at the planning board level, not the DRC, because we did try to submit something, but it was just not, I don't think it's at that level yet.
No,
Once it's at
I don't
planning
think they'll
board,
take
then
it until you're in the
they
planning
won't.
board. So
Great.
at the same time, submit it to both, because I'll be doing the completeness report, and I'll just have to make sure I checked it off.
Great.
Yeah, you don't have to get anything back, you just have to submit.
Thanks.
And so that's one. The other thing is you said you had a verbal from HPC. I think you need to have more than a verbal from HPC. You have something in writing that says you can take these two houses down. So we have that in writing from them. So then there's no.
From a process standpoint, is that something that we would be going, I always
You need
feel,
that for your submittal. I want to see that for your.
okay.
For your submittal to the planning board.
Okay, that was discussed with them, so we can request that letter to be said there, but they wouldn't necessarily need to review the current plans until the planning board, it goes in front of the planning board. Is that correct? We wouldn't go into HPC and then back to the planning board after? Because I think
It's going to
that-
be an auxiliary approval.
Yeah,
and
which was said in the
I mean,
previous meeting.
given that you're in the middle of the town, in historic
Right.
district area, it may be that you just do it, because the board's going to be interested in what they say
Right.
Sure.
and may hold you up on a meeting.
how often do they meet?
They're in the middle of the month.
Once a month, I think.
Gina, you're the board secretary for historic as well? Yeah.
So when do you think you can really start moving this along? Because I hope to see it not a year from now. I'd like to see you before the end of the year. So we can get this thing going. And that building going down and the rolling down restaurant.
So we submitted this not just for concept, but we submitted for planning board. There are a few items that we need to address in terms of the completeness of what you were just mentioning as far as number 61.
Well, I haven't done it.
Shade.
I haven't done it.
Okay.
Report, but I know
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, our intent is to move along as quickly as possible. Yeah.
But do you, the question is, do you want to make some changes based on tonight's meeting to the plans, then resubmit?
Or
I have
just,
some
or
changes.
just come in with
Yeah.
or come in with a submittal plan to the planning.
Well, that's what I mean, yes, but.
I don't know if we have to have another DRC meeting. Do we
No,
have to have another DRC meeting? Okay, so we're beyond this then.
Right.
I think-
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what they have to do is to submit to Gina and me for completeness, and then we call it complete or we don't. And have to hold it up a month, but hopefully it won't, because you've gone through a lot of this already. We'll give you some pointers. And then if it's full complete, then you submit the full set to the board, the full number of sheets, and everybody gets to review it and look at it, and it gets scheduled for a meeting. And that could, it's probably no way in September, but it could probably happen in October.
No, I would say if you can get your material for a completeness review and have it done by the end of September, if that's possible. I mean, it's now, what's it, the 8th of August? If that's even feasible, that you can.
Try not to ask for waivers, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Because waivers cost money, that we charge for the escrow fee and the application fee for waivers. So if something isn't applicable, it's really not applicable, then mark it that way.
so, and we're here obviously for additional guidance or questions or anything like that. But I'm trying to get you an approval by the end of the year. But I would like to see this approved and done by the end of the year, because I think it's been a long time coming, and I think everybody would, like to see this done. And so if we could have it as a goal, we could just get you what you want by the end of the year, I think we should try to work with that.
We're with you on that one.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we're done for.
If
really. Any other questions, please? I think, for follow, for point person, who should have questions go to Gina, and then that gets disseminated to professionals?
I'd like to have it sent to my office separately, just one set. Mark knows, because he's done it with me
Okay,
before.
all right.
So that goes faster then.
Okay, that's fine.
So we really do appreciate the time and your comments
Yeah.
and feedback. So it's been very important, and it'll help to move things along.
Okay.
Hopefully, we're on that same agenda as you're
No,
talking about.
I think we're getting there.
Good.
Good. All right, thank you very much.
All right, have a good evening.
Thank you.